Welcome to this Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission presentation. This presentation will provide information regarding the 2022 Olcc cannabis rules to Olcc marijuana licensees, Oregon Department of Agriculture hemp licensees, and other businesses that sell hemp products to Oregon consumers. I'm Stephen Crowley, Olcc Hemp and Processing Specialist, and I will be presenting along with Olcc Policy Analyst Anthony Geltoski. The Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission approved this technical rules package in December 2021 based on legislation approved by the Oregon Legislature during its 2021 session. This is the third and final installment in a series of presentations that cover some of the changes to OLCC's cannabis rules. This session will focus on rule changes as they relate to Oregon's hemp industry and the sale of hemp products in Oregon. Previous sessions covered changes affecting retailer licenses and changes affecting producer and processor licenses. The information contained in this presentation reflects the statutes and rules regulating adult use marijuana and hemp in Oregon at the time of this recording in March 2022. Note that this information may be superseded by additional laws or rulemaking after this date. If a viewer is in doubt about what rules are currently in effect, they should contact the OLCC. The objective of this session is to cover some of the implications of the rule changes in detail. However, it is not intended to be a substitute for reading the rules. Since this presentation talks about both marijuana and hemp, a quick note on terminology. When we use the term cannabis, we are referring to all cannabis, including both marijuana and hemp. When we talk about marijuana, we're using that term as it is defined in Oregon law. And when we talk about hemp, we are talking about industrial hemp and hemp commodities and products, as those terms are defined in Oregon. The current rules can always be accessed through the Oregon Secretary of State's website. From the rules search page, you can browse by chapter number or chapter name. The Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission rules are Chapter 845. Within Chapter 845, the cannabis rules are located in Divisions 25 and 26. I recommend bookmarking those divisions for easy reference. Links can also be found on the OLCC website by visiting marijuana.oregon.gov. If you want to look at exactly what changed in this rules package, there is a document on the OLCC website showing the changes. Keep in mind that this document is not a complete copy of the cannabis rules. It only includes sections of the rules that changed. Sections of the rule that stayed the same are not included in this document. The Oregon Department of Agriculture's hemp rules are located in Chapter 603, Division 48. The 2021 Bill and Technical Rules package covered a wide range of subjects, including but not limited to violation reclassification, THC concentration limits for marijuana items, THC concentration limits for hemp items, regulation of artificially derived cannabinoids, updating licensee privileges for transferring marijuana items and hemp items, interjurisdictional home delivery for retailers, regulation of industrial hemp-derived vapor items, and a handful of minor technical fixes. The majority of these changes were necessary to implement legislation that was passed in 2021. This session will focus primarily on changes impacting Oregon's hemp industry and the sale of hemp products in Oregon. In addition to changes in OLCC's rules, the state has also published a new edition of the Oregon Revised Statutes, or ORS. This new edition incorporates all of the changes that were made during the 2020 and 2021 legislative sessions. The 2021 edition of the Oregon Revised Statutes has renumbered the majority of Oregon's cannabis laws. The bulk of these laws used to be in ORS 475B. The new edition has moved these laws into ORS 475C. You can still access ORS 475B, which contains the legislative history of these statutes up to 2021, and shows what each statute has been renumbered to. Statutes governing the Oregon Department of Agriculture's hemp program remain in ORS 571. Much of this presentation will deal with cannabinoid limits on hemp items sold to consumers in Oregon. Before we go into the details, this slide provides a quick overview of where and when these rules apply. The limits on sales to minors are in OAR 845, 026, 300 and took effect on July 19, 2021, immediately upon passage of House Bill 3000. The limits on sales to adult consumers outside of the OLCC license system are in OAR 845-026-400 and will go into effect for products sold on and after July 1, 2022. The limits on sales to consumers by OLCC licensed marijuana retailers are in OAR 845-025-2760. These have been in effect since March 1, 2019, and were recently amended effective January 1, 2022. This presentation will not cover the export of hemp products that are not subject to the cannabinoid limits in OLCC rules. For reference, the law addressing THC limits for hemp items in the context of import and export is ORS 475C229. This statute was previously numbered ORS 475B227. That law first took effect July 1, 2018, and was recently amended effective January 1, 2022, to clarify that the 0.3% THC limit refers to total delta-9 THC. In terms of the overall structure of hemp regulation in Oregon, the Oregon Department of Agriculture, or ODA, is the primary regulator of hemp. They issue licenses to hemp growers, hemp handlers, and agricultural hemp seed producers, and ODA is responsible for the bulk of Oregon hemp rules, including the hemp testing rules. ODA is also the agency that issues food safety licenses, which are required for businesses that manufacture foods, including hemp-infused foods, and for businesses that manufacture products that are going to be used as an ingredient in foods. OLCC is the primary regulator of marijuana, but has some responsibilities with regard to hemp. OLCC regulates hemp entering Oregon's licensed adult-use marijuana system. OLCC also sets cannabinoid limits for hemp items for sale to minors, sets cannabinoid limits for hemp items for sale to adults, and regulates the testing and labeling of industrial hemp-derived vapor items. There are a few important definitions when it comes to categories of hemp material. Industrial hemp means live hemp plants, viable hemp seeds, harvested hemp crops, and minimally processed hemp biomass, including biomass that has been dried, chopped, or separated. Industrial hemp is required to have pre-harvest test results showing that the crop does not exceed the total delta-9 THC limit on a dry weight basis as described in ODA rules. The term industrial hemp does not include usable hemp, meaning smokable flower, or any other commodity or product made from hemp. Industrial hemp commodity or product means items made from hemp that contain hemp or contain chemical substances derived from hemp. Hemp commodities or products may or may not include cannabinoids. Examples of hemp commodities and products include hemp textiles, hemp paper, hempcrete, hemp hearts or foods made from hemp hearts, hemp seed oil, cannabinoid hemp edibles or tinctures, hemp topicals, hemp extracts, hemp concentrates, and usable hemp. Hemp items are a subset of industrial hemp commodities and products that generally contain cannabinoids and are intended for consumption or use. The term hemp items does not include hemp grain or fiber products without added cannabinoid. Hemp items can be broadly divided into 4 categories: industrial hemp concentrate, industrial hemp extract, usable hemp, and hemp cannabinoid products. Hemp cannabinoid products is a very broad category, similar to the cannabinoid product category for marijuana items. It includes hemp edibles, hemp tinctures, hemp topicals, and hemp transdermal patches. It also includes any other hemp item that combines 2 or more of the following: usable hemp, industrial hemp concentrates, industrial hemp extracts, and non-cannabis ingredients. This table illustrates the concept. Usable hemp combined with usable hemp remains usable hemp. A hemp concentrate combined with a hemp concentrate remains a hemp concentrate, and a hemp extract combined with a hemp extract remains a hemp extract. Any other combination of these is a hemp cannabinoid product. For example, a hemp vape cartridge made by combining an industrial hemp extract with non-cannabis terpenes or flavors is a hemp cannabinoid product. Note that industrial hemp-derived vapor items, which can include certain hemp extracts, concentrates, and cannabinoid products, have additional requirements that will be covered later in this presentation. It's also important to recognize that industrial hemp concentrates and industrial hemp extracts are two distinct categories defined in law. The difference between them is how they are made. Both hemp concentrates and hemp extracts are products where cannabinoids have been separated from hemp. If the cannabinoids were separated from hemp using a hydrocarbon solvent, like butane or propane, or by using CO2 as an extraction solvent, then the result is an industrial hemp extract. If the cannabinoids were separated from hemp by purely mechanical methods, or by using solvents other than hydrocarbons or CO2, then the result is an industrial hemp concentrate. Different types of businesses have different privileges when it comes to manufacturing industrial hemp and hemp commodities and products. In Oregon, ODA licensed hemp growers can grow industrial hemp. ODA licensed hemp handlers can handle industrial hemp and turn it into hemp commodities and products. ODA licensed agricultural hemp seed producers can process agricultural hemp seed. Olcc licensed processors with a hemp endorsement can also process industrial hemp and hemp items, but if they are handling or processing industrial hemp biomass, they also need to be licensed by ODA as a hemp handler. No ODA or Olcc cannabis license is required if a person or business is just doing secondary processing, receiving a hemp commodity or product and further processing it into another hemp commodity or product. For example, purchasing bulk hemp extract and blending it into a topical product. Note that anyone manufacturing foods or food ingredients in Oregon needs to comply with ODA food safety requirements, including food safety licensing requirements. For out-of-state manufacturers, the requirements will vary by state. Hemp commodities and products that do not exceed 0.3% total Delta-9 THC may be imported into Oregon, but products sold to consumers in Oregon need to comply with Oregon's regulations around sale to consumers, including testing requirements and cannabinoid limits. For businesses that want to sell hemp to consumers, no specific cannabis license is required. Again, any business that sells foods needs to comply with ODA food safety requirements, including food safety licensing requirements. Businesses should also check with their local government to determine if any local licensing is needed. Olcc licensed marijuana retailers can sell hemp to adults age 21 and over and to OMMP cardholders age 18 and over, subject to Olcc tracking and labeling requirements, and Olcc limits on THC and artificially derived cannabinoids. Other businesses can sell hemp to minors and adults, subject to Olcc limits on THC and artificially derived cannabinoids. This includes businesses with Olcc-issued alcohol licenses, Olcc retail sales agents or liquor stores, and businesses that do not have any Olcc license or ODA hemp license. As a reminder, all hemp items sold to consumers must comply with the applicable testing requirements in ORS 571330, ORS 571339, OAR 603, 048, 1500, and OARs 603, 048, 2300 through 2500. Any Oregon business that sells hemp items to consumers must obtain and maintain documentation of the test results for any required compliance tests. If the hemp item was processed or manufactured in Oregon, compliance testing must be performed by an Olcc licensed laboratory that is accredited by the Oregon Environmental Laboratory Accreditation Program, or ORALAP. If the hemp item was processed or manufactured in another state, it must be tested by a laboratory accredited to the same or more stringent standards as an Olcc licensed ORALAP accredited laboratory. Over the past several years, we've received a number of questions about hemp in alcoholic beverages. At this time, no alcoholic beverages in Oregon are permitted to contain CBD or THC, even if it is derived from hemp. In the rules governing Olcc alcohol licensees, OAR 845-006-345, Section 14, prohibits the manufacture, storage, transport, and sale of alcoholic beverages made with any substance derived from cannabis or with cannabinoids derived from any source without approval from the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, or TTB. The TTB has approved some alcoholic beverages that contain ingredients derived from hemp seeds, but they are not approving beverages with other hemp ingredients, and indicate that they will continue to consult with the FDA on the regulatory status of other hemp ingredients. The TTB has released an industry circular 2019-1 covering this subject. The FDA also has a section on their website dedicated to frequently asked questions on the regulatory status of cannabis-derived ingredients, including hemp-derived ingredients. Another important topic when it comes to hemp ingredients is artificially derived cannabinoids. We'll be discussing the regulatory status of artificially derived cannabinoids in Oregon's general hemp market and in the OLCC licensed adult use marijuana market later in this presentation. But before we get there, it's helpful to define exactly what falls into this category. The definition in our rules is copied directly from legislation that passed in 2021. Artificially derived cannabinoid means a chemical substance that is created by a chemical reaction that changes the molecular structure of any chemical substance derived from the plant cannabis, family Cannabaceae. It does not include naturally occurring chemical substances that are separated from cannabis by a chemical or mechanical extraction process, or cannabinoids that are produced by decarboxylation from naturally occurring cannabinoid acids without the use of a chemical catalyst. Other substances can be exempted from the definition of artificially derived cannabinoids through OLCC rulemaking in consultation with the Oregon Health Authority and the Oregon Department of Agriculture. Whether a substance is an artificially derived cannabinoid depends on how it's made. Specifically, whether it's made by a chemical reaction that changes the molecular structure of a substance derived from cannabis. Importantly, it does not include cannabinoids made by decarboxylation from naturally occurring cannabinoid acids. So decarboxylating THCA into THC or CBDA into CBD without the addition of reagents does not fall within the definition of an artificially derived cannabinoid. Artificially derived cannabinoids can include both intoxicating and non-intoxicating substances. Artificially derived cannabinoids can also include artificial versions of substances that occur naturally in cannabis. For example, delta-9 THC manufactured from CBD by acid-catalyzed isomerization is an artificially derived cannabinoid. Other examples of substances that are commonly created as artificially derived cannabinoids include delta-8 THC, cannabinol or CBN, delta-8 THC O-acetate, delta-9 THC O-acetate, and hexahydrocannabinol, or HHC. In discussing regulations around the sale of hemp items to consumers, we are going to cover the general market and the OLCC licensed adult use marijuana market separately. In this context, general market refers to the sale of hemp items by anyone other than an OLCC licensed marijuana business, including but not limited to grocery and convenience stores, smoke shops, CBD stores, supplement stores, and online sales. One of the most important regulations around the sale of hemp products involves the sales of these products to minors under 21 years of age. Beginning July 19, 2021, it became unlawful to sell or deliver an adult use cannabis item to a person under 21 years of age. Adult use cannabis item includes hemp items with 0.5 milligram or more of THC, as well as hemp items that meet certain other criteria that we'll cover on the following slides. This prohibition applies at the retail level. The person or business selling the item is responsible for ensuring that they do not sell adult use cannabis items to minors. Manufacturers and distributors can help retailers stay in compliance by identifying whether the hemp products they manufacture or distribute are adult use cannabis items. Manufacturers and distributors should provide retailers with copies of the test results for these hemp products. The retailer cannot sell the hemp items without obtaining these test results. OAR 845-026-100, Section 2 defines adult use cannabis item to include marijuana items, hemp commodities and products that exceed 0.3% total delta-9 THC or the concentration of total delta-9 THC allowed under federal law, and hemp commodities or products that exceed the limits placed by OLCC in OAR 845-025-300. It does not include hemp grain or fiber products. OAR 845-026-300 spells out the cannabinoid thresholds where a hemp item is considered an adult-use cannabis item. Specifically, a hemp item is an adult-use cannabis item and cannot be sold to a minor if the unit of sale contains half a milligram or more of total delta-9 THC, any other isomer of THC or THCA, or any other cannabinoids advertised by the manufacturer or seller as having an intoxicating effect. A hemp item is also an adult-use cannabis item if it contains any quantity of artificially derived cannabinoids. And a hemp item is an adult-use cannabis item if the required finished product testing was not sufficiently sensitive to show that the total delta-9 THC in the unit of sale does not exceed half a milligram. Again, these limits do not apply to hemp grain and fiber products, such as hemp hearts, hemp seed oil, topicals or cosmetics made from hemp seed oil without added cannabinoids, or hemp clothing or textiles. So how does a retail business know whether a hemp item has less than half a milligram of total delta-9 THC or was tested using a method that's capable of demonstrating the item contains less than half a milligram of total delta-9 THC? They need to look at the Certificate of Analysis, or COA. Remember, anyone selling a hemp item to a consumer is required to have the COA for that item. Understanding the COA is important to know whether a hemp item can be sold to a minor. When reading a COA, it's important to know some of the terminology. Total delta-9 THC refers to a calculated value that combines the amount of delta-9 THC with the potential for delta-9 THCA to convert into delta-9 THC when heated. Cannabis COAs usually include the total delta-9 THC value, which is calculated by the formula shown here. The concentration of total delta-9 THC is equal to the concentration of delta-9 THC plus 87.7% of the concentration of delta-9 THCA. The limit of quantification, or LOQ, refers to the lowest concentration at which the lab can reliably quantify the amount of a substance that's present. And the limit of detection, or LOD, refers to the lowest concentration at which the lab can reliably report whether a substance is present. At concentrations between the LOD and LOQ, the lab will only be able to detect that the substance is present, but will not be able to reliably quantify the concentration of the substance. To calculate how much THC is in a product, you need to know the weight of the product and the concentration of total delta-9 THC reported in the product. If the reported concentration is less than LOQ, use the LOQ as the concentration in the calculation. If the reported concentration is less than LOD, use the LOD as the concentration in the calculation. The amount of total delta-9 THC is equal to the concentration of total delta-9 THC multiplied by the weight of the product. To calculate the amount of THC in milligrams, the simplest approach is to use the weight of the item in grams and the concentration of THC in milligrams per gram. If the COA lists the concentration as a percent, you can multiply that number by 10 to convert to milligrams per gram. So, for example, 0.01% times 10 equals 0.1 milligrams per gram. For a 25-gram item with 0.01 milligrams per gram total THC, you would calculate the amount of total THC in the product as shown here. 25 grams times 0.01 milligrams per gram equals 0.25 milligrams total delta-9 THC in the product. This slide shows an example of the potency results on a certificate of analysis. The total THC information is highlighted at the top. The total delta-9 THC in this item is below the limit the lab was able to quantify. This means it contains less than 0.0005% total delta-9 THC, which is listed there as the LOQ. Converting from percent to milligrams per gram, we multiply by 10, so the LOQ is 0.005 milligrams per gram. COAs may or may not list the product weight. This one does not However, the net weight of the item is usually listed on the label. This product weighs 120 grams, so the calculation for the maximum amount of total THC is 120 grams times 0.005 milligrams per gram equals 0.6 milligrams total delta-9 THC. So these lab results show the product contains less than 0.6 milligrams total delta-9 THC. It does not show that the item contains less than 0.5 milligrams total delta-9 THC. So this is an adult use cannabis item and cannot be sold to minors. But just because a hemp item is an adult use cannabis item, that doesn't necessarily mean that it can only be sold in the Olcc licensed adult use marijuana system. Who can sell an adult use cannabis item depends on what makes it an adult use cannabis item. If it's an adult use cannabis item because it's a marijuana items can only be sold by Olcc licensed retailers. And if it's an adult use cannabis item because it's a hemp item that exceeds 0.3% total delta-9 THC, then in Oregon, it can only be sold by Olcc licensed marijuana retailers, and only if it does not exceed the cannabinoid threshold specified in OAR 845-025-2760. But adult use cannabis items that are hemp items with less than 0.3% total delta-9 THC, that just exceed the cannabinoid limits in OAR 845-026-300, those can be sold to adult consumers, age 21 and over, by any business as long as the item doesn't exceed the limits for sale to adults in OAR 845-026-400, which we'll cover in the following slides. These types of adult use cannabis items can also be sold by Olcc licensed marijuana retailers, as long as the item does not exceed the cannabinoid threshold specified in OAR 845-025-2760. Beginning July 1st, 2022, OAR 845-026-400 places limits on the cannabinoid content in hemp items for sale to adults. The amount of THC in the item cannot exceed the limits in Table 3, which we'll show on the next slide, by more than 10%, and no artificially derived cannabinoids can be in the item. These limits apply to industrial hemp products that contain cannabinoids, are intended for consumption or use, and are offered for sale or transfer to a consumer in Oregon, or are imported into Oregon for delivery to a consumer. Again, this rule does not apply to hemp grain and fiber products. This slide shows Table 3 of OAR 845-026-400, including the applicable per serving and per container milligram limits for total delta-9 THC. Beginning July 1st, 2022, all hemp items are limited to no more than 0.3% total delta-9 THC, in addition to any milligram limits that apply to the item category. This 0.3% limit is the same limit that's already in place through ORS 475C257. Hemp tinctures specifically are limited to no more than 100 milligrams total delta-9 THC. However, for tinctures that are 1 fluid ounce or smaller, the 0.3% limit may be more restrictive than the milligram limit. For example, a 30-gram tincture is limited to no more than 90 milligrams of total delta-9 THC based on the 0.3% limit. 30 grams times 0.3% equals 90 milligrams total delta-9 THC. The term hemp tincture is defined in OAR 845-026-100, Section 25, and means a liquid cannabinoid hemp product intended for human consumption or ingestion, packaged in a container of 4 fluid ounces or less, that consists of either a non-potable solution of at least 25% non-denatured alcohol, in addition to a hemp concentrate or extract or usable hemp, with or without other ingredients, that is exempt from the Liquor Control Act under ORS 471-035, or a non-potable solution comprised of glycerin or plant-based oil, a hemp concentrate or extract or usable hemp, with or without other ingredients, that does not contain any added sweeteners. Hemp edibles, hemp transdermal patches, and any other cannabinoid hemp product other than tinctures or topicals are limited to no more than 2 milligrams total delta-9 THC per serving and 20 milligrams total delta-9 THC per container. For very small products, less than 6.7 grams per container or less than 0.67 grams per serving, the 0.3% limit will be more restrictive than the milligram limit. There are no specific milligram limits for usable hemp, industrial hemp concentrates, industrial hemp extracts, or hemp topicals. These products are just limited to no more than 0.3% total delta-9 THC by weight. In addition to the limits on THC content, hemp items sold to Oregon consumers on the general market are not permitted to contain any amount of artificially derived cannabinoids. This limitation includes both intoxicating and non-intoxicating artificially derived cannabinoids, including but not limited to CBN made synthetically from CBD or THC, delta-8 THC made synthetically from CBD or delta-9 THC, THCO, HHC, and HHCO. There is still a limited path for products containing non-intoxicating artificially derived cannabinoids to be sold in Oregon in the OLCC licensed adult use marijuana market. To recap, for hemp items sold to Oregon consumers on the general market, the seller must have COAs for any hemp items that they sell. Items that have not been tested cannot be sold. A hemp item cannot be sold to a minor under 21 years of age if the item contains more than 0.5 milligram total delta-9 THC or other THC isomers or other cannabinoids advertised as having an intoxicating effect by the manufacturer, or if the testing does not show the item contains less than 0.5 milligram total delta-9 THC, or if the item contains any artificially derived cannabinoids. A hemp item cannot be sold to any consumer, including adults, if the item contains more than 0.3% total delta-9 THC by weight, or if the item exceeds the per serving or per container milligram limits for total delta-9 THC set in OAR 845-026-400, Table 3, by more than 10%. Or if the item contains any artificially derived cannabinoids. So that covers sales to Oregon consumers on the general market. Next, we'll look at hemp items in the OLCC licensed adult use marijuana market. Before we go into the details of the regulations, let's review where hemp fits into Oregon's adult use marijuana system. First, some terminology. There are hemp licenses, hemp certificates, and hemp endorsements. These all sound like similar terms, but the differences are important. A hemp license is issued by the Oregon Department of Agriculture. The two types of licenses that are relevant here are hemp grower licenses and hemp handler licenses. A hemp grower grows the crop, while a hemp handler handles the crop and transforms it into commodities and products. A hemp certificate is issued by OLCC. Hemp growers and handlers who hold an ODA hemp license can apply for an OLCC hemp certificate, which gives the certificate holder a metric account, which they can use to transfer hemp to OLCC licensed marijuana businesses. A business with a hemp grower certificate can only transfer harvested industrial hemp. A business with a hemp handler certificate can transfer harvested industrial hemp as well as hemp items. A hemp endorsement is a privilege that can be requested by an OLCC licensed marijuana processor. Processors with a hemp endorsement may receive, process, and transfer hemp and hemp items as allowed by rule. In general, a processor who receives harvested industrial hemp will also need to be licensed with the Oregon Department of Agriculture as a hemp handler. There is no circumstance where an OLCC licensed processor will need a hemp certificate for their licensed premises. The purpose of the hemp certificate is to enter untracked hemp into metric. A processor can only receive metric tracked hemp to their licensed premises. They cannot receive untracked hemp, so there would never be a circumstance where they could use the privileges of the hemp certificate without violating OLCC rules. There are two general categories of hemp material that can be transferred to OLCC licensees, subject to the requirements in rule. The first is harvested industrial hemp. This refers to hemp biomass that has not been processed into a commodity or product. It does not include usable hemp, meaning hemp that has been dried and manicured into smokable flower. The second category is hemp items. This refers to hemp commodities and products that contain cannabinoids and includes usable hemp, industrial hemp concentrates, industrial hemp extracts, and cannabinoid hemp products. Olcc licensees cannot receive viable hemp seeds or living hemp plants. Hemp grain and fiber products that do not contain cannabinoids are not subject to these rules and are treated the same as any non-cannabis commodity. This includes hemp fiber clothing and textiles, hemp hearts, hemp seed oil, and soaps and cosmetics made with hemp seed oil that do not contain added cannabinoids. A hemp grower certificate holder can only transfer harvested industrial hemp, but not smokable flower or other hemp items. A hemp handler certificate holder can transfer harvested industrial hemp and hemp items, including smokable flower. A processor with a hemp endorsement can receive harvested industrial hemp and hemp items. A processor without a hemp endorsement cannot receive any hemp. Processors can request a hemp endorsement by submitting a Change to Processor Endorsements form to Olcc. A wholesaler can receive both harvested industrial hemp and hemp items. A retailer can only receive hemp items, but not harvested industrial hemp. And producers cannot receive harvested industrial hemp or hemp items. When a hemp certificate holder wants to transfer harvested industrial hemp or hemp items to an Olcc licensee, the first step is to enter the hemp or hemp item into metric. After the item is entered into metric, they need to contact a lab to request the required compliance testing. When laboratory staff come to collect the test samples, this needs to be recorded in metric, so the test results attach to the package when the lab completes testing. The required testing for hemp and hemp items is the same as for the equivalent marijuana item, except that all hemp and hemp items being transferred to an Olcc licensee also need to have compliance testing for potency, regardless of whether a potency test would be required for the equivalent marijuana item. If the hemp or hemp item passes testing, including having THC potency results below the limits allowed under OAR 845-025-2760, the item can be transferred to an Olcc licensee as allowed by rule. Hemp handlers may not transfer any hemp items containing artificially derived cannabinoids unless the licensee is allowed to receive them under OAR 845-025-1310. Any finished products that are packaged and ready for sale at an Olcc licensed retailer must comply with Olcc labeling requirements, including either having an approved label or using a valid generic label. Next, let's go over the basics of hemp at an Olcc licensed marijuana retailer. Marijuana retailers can only sell products to adults age 21 and over and OMMP cardholders age 18 and over. They cannot sell products to minors, except for OMMP cardholders age 18 and over. The prohibition on selling adult-use cannabis items to a minor does not apply to retailers selling to OMMP cardholders. THC limits for hemp items sold by a marijuana retailer are the same for consumers and for OMMP cardholders. Hemp items are not subject to the tax on sales of marijuana. Retailers should not be collecting the marijuana tax when selling hemp items which contain no marijuana. All hemp items sold by a marijuana retailer must be tracked in metric. Any other hemp commodities and products that are not a hemp item are treated the same as any non-cannabis product. Retailers can sell these products and do not need to track them in metric. Examples of commodities and products that are not hemp items include hemp clothing, hemp paper, foods made from hemp hearts, hemp seed oil, and soaps or cosmetics made from hemp seed oil without added cannabinoids. There are no daily sales limits for hemp items sold by a marijuana retailer. However, a retailer may only sell hemp items to a consumer. A consumer is someone who is purchasing the items other than for the purpose of resale. This is similar to the situation with alcoholic beverages. There is no limit on the amount of beer and wine a person can purchase from a grocery store, but the grocery store cannot wholesale alcohol under their retailer license. If someone wants to purchase hemp items in bulk for the purpose of resale or for further commercial processing, they can receive bulk hemp items directly from a processor who has a hemp endorsement or from a source outside the OLCC licensed adult use marijuana system. This slide shows Table 1 of OAR 845-025-2760, including the applicable per serving and per container milligram limits, along with the overall concentration limits for total delta-9 THC in hemp products in the OLCC system. Changes to THC limits for hemp products in the OLCC system include doubling the total THC limit for hemp edibles and for all hemp cannabinoid products other than tinctures or topicals, from 1 milligram per serving and 10 milligrams per container to 2 milligrams per serving and 20 milligrams per container. Similarly, the total THC limit for hemp tinctures, hemp concentrates, and hemp extracts has been doubled from 50 milligrams per container to 100 milligrams per container. These changes also remove the milligram limit on hemp topicals, instead limiting them to 0.3% total delta-9 THC by weight. For products weighing more than 3 grams, this change allows for larger amounts of THC in the product. These changes are all generally in line with THC limits for hemp products outside the OLCC system. The main difference between hemp products in the OLCC system and hemp products on the general market is that OLCC has the authority to allow hemp products in the OLCC system to exceed 0.3% total THC. So, for example, usable hemp in the OLCC system can have up to 1% total THC, and hemp concentrates and extracts in the OLCC system can have up to 5% total THC, as long as they stay below the 100 milligram per container limit. In addition to limits on THC content, OLCC rules also place guardrails around artificially derived cannabinoids being present in products sold in the OLCC licensed adult use marijuana system, in both hemp and marijuana items. The prohibitions related to transferring artificially derived cannabinoids are located in OAR 845-025-1310. Licensees may only transfer an artificially derived cannabinoid or a product containing an artificially derived cannabinoid if the artificially derived cannabinoid also occurs as a natural component of cannabis, as reported in at least 3 peer-reviewed publications, is not a controlled substance in Oregon, is not intoxicating, is not intended for inhalation, and was manufactured in a facility with an ODA food safety license by either an OLCC licensed processor or an ODA licensed hemp handler, and the manufacturer of the artificially derived cannabinoid has submitted a new dietary ingredient notification to the FDA and received a no objections response, or made a GRAS determination, either self-affirmed or acknowledged by the FDA. There are 2 limited exceptions to this prohibition. One exception allows for a sell-through of existing products containing artificially derived cannabinoids. Until July 1, 2022, licensees may continue to process and sell products containing artificially derived cannabinoids if the artificially derived cannabinoid was manufactured by a processor or received from a commission-certified hemp handler before January 1, 2022, and the processing of the artificially derived cannabinoid did not violate OLCC rules. An example of a process that violates OLCC rules would be converting CBD into delta-8 THC, THC-O acetate, or hexahydrocannabinol. Those processes violate OAR 845-025-3220, Section 3, which prohibits treating marijuana items with a substance that increases the potency. On and after July 1, 2022, products containing artificially derived cannabinoids can no longer be transferred or sold to consumers unless the product complies with the general artificially derived cannabinoid requirements detailed on the previous slide, or the artificially derived cannabinoid in question is CBN, and the product complies with the exemption for certain CBN products outlined on the next slide. The second exception is for certain CBN products. Some marijuana products and hemp products are made with CBN that is created synthetically from CBD or THC derived from cannabis. Until July 1st, 2023, these products can continue to be sold as long as the product is not intended for inhalation and the CBN was manufactured in a facility with an ODA food safety license by either an OLCC licensed processor or an ODA licensed hemp handler. Beginning July 1st, 2022, these products must have an approved label that complies with OAR 845-025-7145. Beginning July 1st, 2023, this exception no longer applies, and products containing artificially derived CBN must comply with all of the normal requirements for artificially derived cannabinoids in OAR 845-025-1310, Section 1. The artificially derived cannabinoid labeling requirements are located in OAR 845-025-7145. The definition of generic label in OAR 845-025-7000 has also been updated to address products containing artificially derived cannabinoids. Beginning July 1st, 2022, all products containing artificially derived cannabinoids, including artificially derived CBN, must have an approved label that complies with OAR 845-025-7145. On and after July 1st, 2022, retailers can no longer sell a product containing artificially derived cannabinoids to a consumer unless the product complies with these labeling requirements. On and after July 1st, 2022, products containing artificially derived cannabinoids cannot use a generic label. The label must disclose that the product contains artificially derived cannabinoids by including the words artificially derived cannabinoid in the product identity. If the item type requires an ingredient list, the ingredient listing must identify any artificially derived cannabinoid by its full name and use the words artificially derived in the description of that specific ingredient. To recap, the regulations on artificially derived cannabinoids come into effect in 3 stages. From now until July 1st, 2022, products can be sold if they meet the requirements of OAR 845-025-1310, Section 4, which requires that the artificially derived cannabinoid was made by a processor or received in metric by an OLCC licensee from a hemp handler prior to January 1st, 2022, or if the product meets the more stringent requirements of OAR 845-025-1310, Sections 1 or 3. From July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023, products with artificially derived CBN can be sold to consumers as long as they have an approved label and meet the requirements of Sections 1 or 3 of OAR 845-025-1310. Section 1 is the requirement that includes going through an ordinary regulatory process for introducing a novel ingredient into foods or supplements, either obtaining a favorable response to a new dietary ingredient notification or making a GRAS determination. Section 3 is the exception for CBN products that are not intended for inhalation, where the CBN was made at a facility with an ODA food safety license by either an ODA licensed hemp handler or an OLCC licensed processor. On July 1st, 2022, retailers must stop selling any products that do not have an approved label or do not comply with Sections 1 or 3 of OAR 845-025-1310. Then, from July 1st, 2023 onward, all products containing artificially derived cannabinoids must have an approved label and meet the requirements of OAR 845-025-1310, Section 1. Another major change in 2021 legislation allows for OLCC licensed processors to transfer hemp out of the OLCC licensed adult use system. The rule that describes how processors can transfer hemp items out of the OLCC system is OAR 845-025-3320. Processors with a hemp endorsement may transfer hemp items out of the OLCC licensed system to unlicensed businesses and individuals if the item has passed compliance testing and the item does not exceed 0.3% total THC and the hemp item otherwise complies with OLCC rules. All transfers must be recorded in metric, and a manifest must be generated. The hemp items must be held on-site under camera coverage for at least 3 business days, not including weekends or holidays, after generating the manifest. If the processor is transporting the items, they must carry a physical copy of the manifest. If the processor is transferring the hemp items to a consumer or to a miner, then the item also needs to comply with the general requirements for the transfer or sale of hemp items to consumers or miners. A processor cannot transfer a hemp item to a miner under 21 years of age unless the item complies with OAR 845-026-300, which requires that the item contains less than half a milligram of total THC. Products transferred to a miner also cannot contain any artificially derived cannabinoids. Beginning July 1, 2022, any hemp item transferred to a consumer in Oregon must also comply with OAR 845-026-400, which places limits on the amount of THC allowed in a hemp item transferred to a consumer, and prohibits hemp items containing artificially derived cannabinoids from being transferred to Oregon consumers. If the processor is transferring hemp items to anyone other than a consumer, and the recipient is at least 21 years of age, OARs 845-026-300 and 400 do not apply.
Hello, my name is Anthony Galtoski, and I am a policy analyst for the OLCC. I will be discussing the testing and labeling of industrial hemp-derived vapor items. On and after July 1, 2022, all industrial hemp-derived vapor items for sale to consumers in Oregon must be tested and labeled according to rules in Division 26. These rules are only applicable to products that are not being sold in the OLCC marketplace. For example, this may include gas stations, grocery stores, convenience stores, or a smoke shop. While I am generalizing here, these rules apply to hemp extracts and concentrates that are put into a vape cartridge, whether alone or combined with a battery. They do not apply to bulk hemp extract or concentrate that are being put into a jar or extract like shatter that is being wrapped in paper. The specific definitions are in Division 26, and individuals should review the definition of inhalant delivery system in ORS 431.175. There are 3 important definitions in Division 26 to take note of for these products. The precise definitions are on the slide, and I will generalize the following definitions in order to help viewers and listeners to better understand these requirements. But ultimately, the text of the rules and laws are what controls. A hemp vapor item manufacturer is a person or an ODA licensed hemp handler who is responsible for the labeling or manufacturing of an industrial hemp derived vapor item sold in Oregon. Person is defined in ORS 174.100 and is very broad and encompasses individuals, corporations, limited liability companies, and other business entities. Essentially, these rules apply to people and businesses that are responsible for labeling or manufacturing an industrial hemp-derived vapor item for sale in Oregon. If these products are being made outside of Oregon, they must still comply with these rules before they can be sold. If the products are being made in Oregon, but not for sale in Oregon, then these rules would not apply. There's also a precise definition of industrial hemp-derived vapor item, which I went over on the previous slide. Review the definitions in OAR 845-026-0110. Industrial hemp-derived vapor items must be tested according to the Oregon Health Authority's rules. While I am generalizing, these testing requirements more or less mirror those of marijuana and hemp items in the OLCC system. For example, these products will be tested for pesticides, residual solvents, and potency, or THC and CBD. There is a link in the slide to OHA's website which has more information regarding testing. The OLCC also has audit testing authority over these products. OLCC laboratory licensees will be responsible for tracking and entering into the cannabis tracking system information regarding the testing of these products. Review the rule and compliance bulletin linked in the slide. Note that hemp vapor item manufacturers will not be in CTS. Questions related to testing can be sent to olcc.labs@oregon.gov. Prior to transferring or offering for sale an industrial hemp-derived vapor item, the hemp vapor item manufacturer must comply with Olcc packaging and labeling rules. These rule requirements more or less mirror the requirements for marijuana and hemp items that are sold in the Olcc marketplace, with a few minor exceptions. Labels must feature the hemp symbol on the front, and the cartridge or vaporizing device must have the hemp symbol affixed to it. It can be downloaded on the Olcc's website, and there is a link in the slide to its location. Keep in mind that the symbol has a minimum size requirement and the color cannot be altered. The packaging and labeling rules can be found in OAR 845-026-7000 through 7070. If you are adding non-cannabis substances to your industrial hemp-derived vapor items, such as botanical terpenes, non-cannabis terpenes, or flavorings, there are special requirements you must adhere to. This includes providing the Olcc with detailed information from the manufacturer, what is in the product, and fully disclosing the product's ingredients on the label. There are also specific substances you cannot put into your product, such as MCT oil, propylene glycol, and vitamin E acetate. Review OAR 845-026-7040 and Compliance Bulletin CE 2020-07 for the specifics. Label applications must be submitted under the Olcc's online licensing system. Hemp vapor item manufacturers can create a non-Olcc licensee account by selecting Register for a Business Account. A link to the application process is included in the presentation. If you are using a generic label, that is a label that only contains what the rule requires for the product and has no additional information such as graphics, text, or logos, you do not need to register for an account. The account should only be used for submitting labels that are non-generic or subject to pre-approval. The Olcc does not have specific guidance yet for industrial hemp vapor item manufacturers. However, materials should be available in the near future. In the meantime, you can review the Olcc's packaging and labeling website, and specifically the packaging and labeling guide. If you have questions related to packaging and labeling, please send them to marijuana.packaging@oregon.gov.
While the bulk of Olcc rules related to hemp deal with processed hemp items, there is one part of the rules package that deals with living hemp plants grown by ODA licensed hemp growers. As part of 2021 House Bill 3000, the Oregon legislature directed Olcc to establish a test where a hemp crop may be presumptively found to be marijuana. This part of the law was codified as Oregon Laws 2021, Chapter 542, Sections 40, 41, and 41A. Olcc adopted the criteria for presumptively determining if a crop is marijuana as OAR 845-026-4100 on July 19, 2021, immediately upon passage of House Bill 3000. This rule package made that rule permanent, but did not include any substantial changes to the rule. This rule does not use the 0.3% limit for THC, because the purpose of the rule is not to catch growers with hemp that is slightly hot. The intent is to allow ODA staff or Olcc staff acting on ODA's behalf to spot check some of the plants in order to identify crops that are commercially viable for sale as marijuana on the illicit market. This does not replace pre-harvest testing that's required by ODA. Growers still need to obtain pre-harvest tests showing that the crop is compliant with the 0.3% total THC limit as required by ODA rules, regardless of whether their grow was subject to this presumptive testing. The rule sets the presumptive threshold for flowering plants at 5% total THC. For plants that are not flowering, the thresholds are 1% total THC, or a THC to CBD ratio that is greater than or equal to 5:1. Agency staff take at least 3 composite samples, and the crop is presumptively found to be marijuana if 50% or more of the samples, or the average of all of the samples, exceeds one of the applicable thresholds. That concludes our rules update presentation, focusing on changes relating to Oregon's hemp market and the sale of hemp items to Oregon consumers. This slide includes several useful links if you are looking for more information. The Public Meetings page contains links and agendas for OLCC's public meetings, including the monthly commission meeting, as well as public meetings that are part of the rulemaking process. The Gov Delivery link is helpful to stay informed about what's happening at OLCC. When you sign up, you can select which topic areas you would like to receive notifications about. Notifications related to any future OLCC rulemaking will be sent out to interested persons via Gov Delivery. If you have questions that weren't addressed in this presentation, you can reach out to us directly. Marijuana compliance questions can be directed to olcc.marijuana@oregon.gov. Marijuana licensing questions can be directed to marijuana.licensing@oregon.gov. Packaging and labeling questions can be directed to marijuana.packaging@oregon.gov. Testing questions can be directed to olcc.labs@oregon.gov. Hemp questions can be directed to olcc.hemp@oregon.gov, and rulemaking questions can be directed to olcc.rulemaking@oregon.gov. General questions related to metric can be directed to metric support by phone or email. Metric questions related to OLCC rules should be directed to marijuana.cts@oregon.gov. Thank you for taking the time to view this presentation.